Welcome to the Depression to Expression podcast, everyone. Today, a beautiful guest, Brooke Bridges, a mental health speaker out of the U.S. If you want to hear some real talk, if you want to push bullshit aside when it comes to mental health education and speaking, well, this is it. Here you go. Let's just start this baby off in 3, 2, 1. So, hey, Brooke, what's up?
Yo, what's poppin'?
Yo! Okay, so it's been how many months since we met at the Kindred Conference?
Like 5 months almost?
5 months. Okay, so when I speak to other people who went to this mental health conference, it was incredible. How did you feel after? How long did that buzz stay with you? Because it was a pretty exciting time meeting all of these people.
Yeah. It stayed with me for a while. I think it's helpful because I'm a mental health speaker, so it's kind of like blends into my normal day-to-day life. But yeah, it really inspired me to come back to my community and focus on my smaller community here, because I'm from LA, but you know, there's so many people out there doing stuff. So it was like really cool to be like, well, they don't need me out here. Let me go back, to Berkshire County in this tiny little town and like do stuff here.
Wow, what do you mean that there's like so much going on in LA? Do you mean there's a lot of advocates out there and just from a population standpoint, there's just a lot going on?
Yeah, like I think because it's a bigger city, there's a lot of advocates, there's a lot of people, a lot of organizations that are doing good things already out there.
Right.
So it's not necessarily that important for me to be focusing my attention there because there are a lot of people focusing their attention there already.
That's really interesting. So you'd rather go, so this is where you were born and raised?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Los Angeles.
Okay, so
Yep.
wait, what's here? Where are you living now?
So now I live in the Berkshires of Western Massachusetts. So very different, very, very different. I mean, I live in a town with 40,000 people and everyone's like, it's so busy there, and it's like, I came from LA where there's 10 million people in the county.
Right.
Yeah.
I've seen some of your pictures on Instagram. How fresh is that air though, where you're
Oh my
living?
God. It's amazing.
Yeah. You don't get that in LA. LA it's
No.
kind of like Toronto. Toronto's not as bad, but just a lot of car exhaust.
Oh
Right.
yeah.
And even if I
It's
drive up like an hour north to my parents' place in the suburbs, you just get out of the car and it tastes and smells fresher.
mm-hmm.
So do you find moving out of LA gives you more clarity of mind? How has that worked for you mental health wise about moving?
Yeah. So, when I left LA, I was really struggling. Like I was 15 pounds lighter than I am now. I know this is a podcast, so you can't see me, but I was like anorexic for sure. Cause I was, an actor and I was really focused on my image. And when I moved here, like they don't care about the way you look at all. So that was really good for me to like pause for a second and be like, you got to look at what really matters, which is my mental health. And when I first got here, I sunk into a really deep depression actually, because, in LA, you're moving 100 miles per hour. Like you're just going and going and going and going. And there's no chance to really look at yourself. And then I got here and it was like a dead stop because first of all, it was October. So winter was coming. I live alone. It was just kind of like, time to sit with yourself and see what's up. And so I fell into a deep depression and then was able to really look at my past trauma and just my mental health issues in general and basically create a game plan to like heal some stuff.
Wow. And you think you needed to get out of LA for that healing process to happen and almost break down to break through type of mentality?
Absolutely. I think moving here and having that, like I finally ended the cycle because like my mental health issues would just cycle throughout the years in LA and never really hit a bottom. And then when I got here, there was no choice but to go deep. Like literally the darkness was coming in the winter time, And so I think it saved my life moving here, even though it was really terrifying. I think it was what I needed to get out of that cycle that I
Wow.
was in.
What an incredible perspective. Because, a lot of people are afraid for good reason too, to go deep like that. and actually put yourself in a state of almost no return and hitting rock bottom and seeing what that feels like. And it's
Yeah.
very rocky and dangerous and scary. So let's rewind a bit. Like, when did the mental health, challenges come into play in your life? Let's rewind a little bit. Was this part of childhood, adolescence? When did this happen? And what were you dealing with?
Yeah. So, I'll start from the beginning. So I grew up in Los Angeles, California, and I was born into a family of actors. Like my entire family, my dad's side of the family is just entertainers. And so I was put into acting at a really young age. And that's when my mental health stuff started. So like I did my first job when I was like 6 months old. So I literally had no choice in the matter. And like I was on a lot of shows growing up, like soap operas and things. And at first I was like, this is cool, this is great. But then when I was like around 9 or 10, that's when I started getting anxiety. Like it presented as this pit in my gut. Like I always thought I was sick. I always felt nauseous. And I realize now, like looking back, that it's anxiety. And I know a big part of it was like, I was literally auditioning for acting jobs, like sometimes 5 days a week, like 5 times a week, where I go into a room, they tell you what to wear, what your name is, what your backstory is. And then it's kind of like, say these words in front of this camera with all these people in here, the way that we want you to, or else basically you're not good enough. And
Mm,
so I started at a really young age feeling really insecure, and like nothing I did was ever good enough, because the majority of the time as an actor you get rejected, like more times than not, you know.
right.
And so there was that big pressure of like needing to look perfect and needing to be great at acting so that my family loved me and the people at school liked me. And it was just this big, weird, very confusing thing for a child. And so like 9 or 10, the anxiety started. And then in middle school, I was like, all right, there's something really wrong here with you. Cause I always felt this pit in my gut. I felt really isolated. Um, and I started kind of feeling like there was something wrong with me. And then when I got into high school, it just like kind of took a turn for the worst. And I started drinking and smoking, and I didn't realize at first that it was a coping mechanism, but I realized later, you know, as I got older, that I had all these feelings that I couldn't talk about because in my family, you know, I'm half Black, and African American culture, like you just don't talk about emotional stuff.
Mm.
And so it was very much stifled as a kid. And so in high school, it kind of came up where I was like, oh yeah, I haven't talked about any of my trauma or any of my emotional distress. And it just kind of came out, obviously hormonal and all that stuff too.
That's a lot of pressure. First, in childhood, being an actor like that. Because my partner's an actor, and she, like, it's the same kind of thing. You go into a room, you're told what to say. You have to have, there's certain body image that they're looking for, but the big thing is that piece of rejection.
Mm,
Yeah, like you're being rejected way more times than not. It doesn't matter how good you are. Sometimes you just don't fit the part and what they're looking
right.
for image wise. So it's not actually your fault. That's really difficult. Has dealing with that rejection early on, has that helped though, through your career and mental health speaking and being an entrepreneur and coach?
I think in some ways it definitely has helped, but for a certain like period of time, I think I saw it as like, well, nothing's ever going to work out anyway. Like, you know, like more often than not, I'm going to be rejected. So nothing really matters. Like it was kind of like a, you know, that mentality. But then as I got a little older, you know, and became more mature and everything, I was like, okay, this is actually valuable because I'm willing to take risks, and it
Right.
doesn't really scare me that much. You know, like I've had multiple businesses that have done well and then failed, and it wasn't a big deal. You know, I was like, well, move on to the next, you know.
Right, right. And when you're talking, because you said the pit in your stomach where it could almost feel, well, it obviously is physical, but you don't know the actual source of that physical anxiety and those feelings. So you didn't know it was anxiety at first. When you do talks at schools and when you have an audience, do you share that experience? Because I think that's pretty common with people where they think it's just, oh, I ate something, and they
Hmm.
don't really think that, hey, this might be the way I'm thinking or the way I'm perceiving my career, or
Right.
I'm being bullied at school, et cetera, and all these connections. Is that something people resonate with and what you talk about?
Oh yeah, yeah, that's a big part of it. Especially when I talk to younger kids, like especially when I talk to like middle school, I always make the body sensations a big point, because that's usually where it manifests, is a physical sensation, like whether like your ears are getting hot, or you're sweaty, or your stomach hurts. Like usually that's an emotion. Like you carry your emotions in your body. And so a big part of me, like in my healing, that I talk about a lot in the schools, is like I got to a certain point as an adult where I needed to figure out, like I had to scan my body, like mindfulness body scanning. All right, so I have this feeling in my gut. Now, what are my thoughts? What am I thinking about? And kind of put those two things together and find the emotion behind it. So like if my ears are hot and I'm, me and my mom got in a fight, like maybe I'm angry. But like how do you piece those two things together? And I think that's like the emotional awareness is where a lot of kids don't have that, because we're not taught any of that. So when I speak, that's like a big point, is like how do we put all of these things that are going on in our minds and in our bodies together and
That's
find
so
like the
great.
source. Yeah.
Right. That's great. And again, that is something that is not taught in school,
No.
but they do know how to, do some basic algebra, but they
Right.
don't know, they don't know how to, be,
Be a human.
yeah, be a human, especially. Why is it? Because you brought up another really interesting point. Um, why is, this emotional intelligence and talking about your feelings not happen in the Black community as much?
Well, honestly, I think a lot of it has to do with like generational trauma, to be honest, because if you think about it, like from what I've gathered from, my dad and seeing him and my grandfather, is that back when racism, I mean, obviously there's so much racism now, but we won't go into that. But,
We can go into that. We can go into that.
oh, I don't know. It's so deep. Yeah, it's terrifying. But, no, like, so my dad, back when racism was like, things were still segregated, like this is the colored people's water fountains and whatever. I think there was a lot of just fear, where it's like, if you don't stay in line, don't show emotion, don't show fear, don't talk about it, something bad is going to happen to you. Like that's what I've witnessed from my dad. And I feel like that's why in the Black community too, like parenting is very controlling, because they're trying to keep you safe. Or like there's this generational underlying um, thought processing that like if you step out of line, you're gonna get, something bad's gonna happen to you, or like that. At least that's what I perceive. And so like you gotta just don't talk about it, just stay cool, like just don't. And like that's where the stigma comes in a lot. You can't show emotion, you can't talk about it, just stay cool, stay calm. You gotta be hard, you gotta be tough.
Right. Really interesting. So you speaking up about these things, half Black doesn't matter, okay? Like you still have this background, and with your dad's dealings with that. So with you speaking about mental health as someone in a minority community, what's that been like for you? Have you been rejected? Have you lost friends? Like how has that been for you?
It's actually been really great. Like it's people have been really receptive, and like my Black side of the family too. It's been really cool, because I think now they're like, oh yeah, we can talk about stuff. Like they didn't even like, a part of me feels like they didn't even really like realize that it's okay. So I've had multiple family members come to me, my dad especially, and be like, yeah, I'm really working through some stuff. And it's like amazing, because that doesn't normally happen. Or like my aunt coming to me and being like, hey, maybe you could talk to your cousin about some stuff, because I think he might be going through some stuff. And because you talk about the mental health stuff, like maybe it would be important for him. And like when I go into schools too, like, and it's primarily people of color, kids of color, they seem to be really like listening. Like they really, it gets into them. And a lot of kids of color come up to me and are like, I really get what you were talking about. Like I really relate. So it's actually been really good.
Well,
It's
that's
actually been
really
really
good news. That's really good to hear. And I think we need obviously these different perspectives because, hey, like, how to put this? mental health advocacy in Canada and in the States, like there's so many, and nonprofits, you have like speaker bureaus about mental
Yeah.
health. So many white people,
Oh my God.
so many. And I was even like, oh, should I get into this? Because I'm just another freaking white dude. There's so many white guys. You know what I mean, though? I'm just like, we
Yeah.
need some diversity in the space. And I'm all for, I'd say I'm more for diversity of thought where I'm not really attached to the whole skin color and identifying this way. But when it comes to mental health and sharing these stories and for people to relate to another person, I think there needs to be that shared experience, and in culture as well. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree with that because it's like you look at someone and you don't see yourself in them. You're not represented. And it's like the same thing like in schools, and all of these symbols of authority are don't look like the communities most of the time that they're trying to help. And so it comes off as this very like white savior complex thing. We're like, we need to go in and like save all these low income people of color because they have mental health issues and they're impoverished. And it's like way deeper and more systemic than that. But I think being able to like go into a community and empower people in the community to be the ones to speak up, then the kids can look at this person of color and be like, oh yeah, I can see myself in them. Now
Mm,
it makes sense to me. But if you just have a white person coming in and telling you what you are, what you experience, what you need, it's this very touchy thing where you're like, I don't believe you. And like it's interesting too, because when I grew up, like my first therapist was an old white guy, and I was like, nope, he'll never understand me. Like, no way, no
right.
way. He could never understand as a biracial young girl what I go through. And I think it's similar in the mental health community. So having me be a person of color is like really, really important, and the kid and be young, and the kids are like,
Yes.
okay, I get it. I get it. Like, and then they think I'm 17. So they're like, oh my God, our friend, like we could just go talk to her about everything. And they'll come up to me afterwards and just like spill their souls with me. And it's like,
Oh
amazing.
my Oh, that's so great. Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess you could look 17.
They really think so. They're like, how old are you? Because I tell them all this long life story. And they're like, wait, but how old are you? And I'm like 28. And they're like, oh my God.
Right? We were just gonna invite you to like our Instagram chat and all of this and like
Right?
the school dance. Oh no.
It's so funny.
That's so great. That's another problem with teaching. A lot of teaching is mostly female dominated, and where it's harder to get male teachers, at least in Canada. Sorry. If you are a male, it's a lot easier to get a teaching job because it's just filled with females. And then again, we're raising these kids with no male role models, especially if their mom and dad are working full-time jobs and they're raised in daycare. Like the family structure needs to be kind of really put back together. And I think through your speaking, by teaching others to share their stories and empower others rather than just telling them these things, then they go home, just like how it changed in your family, then they talk about this at home, and then geez, further on it goes into school, after school it goes in the workplace. Like you're
Right.
creating these sparks in kids, and I think that's so awesome. What do you find with your speaking is a very common issue for kids when they come up to you after you do a Q&A? What do you find are some common themes?
The main thing is that their parents don't believe them. Like a lot of kids actually want help. It's very interesting. And they're like, my parents don't believe me. And that's it's all emotional invalidation, like just invalidating emotions because they're kids. And that's what I experienced a lot when I was a child, where you would because you're a kid and you express some sort of emotion, they're like, oh, you're just being a kid. Like just, you'll get over it, or you're just being dramatic, or you're hormonal, or look, all these excuses for why you might feel something. And it's super common. Like parents just kind of brush stuff off when you're a teenager, especially, that you're hormonal or you're overreacting, and that's a big thing. Is like kids are like, my mom just doesn't believe me, or like I can't really talk to them about it because they don't care or they don't believe me most of the time.
Hmm.
And I remember like even being a kid, like if you think about your first heartbreak as a teenager, what do parents generally say? oh, you'll get over it. You'll meet somebody else. Like, don't worry, you'll meet someone else. But there's never that initial validation of the emotion. Like, even if it's irrational, what you're feeling, like, I'm going to die, you know, it's still a valid emotion. You still feel it. And that's like the missing link, I think, with most parents is like, all I really needed as a kid, which seems like a lot of these kids really need, is just, wow, I'm sure that really hurts. I know that does not feel good. And you will get over it and it will be better. But like that initial validating the emotion is like the missing key, is the missing link.
It's
And
like teaching them, or not teaching them, telling them that it'll be fine right away, or you'll get over it right away, without that first step, as you said, validating where they're at right now.
right,
And
what
even
they
telling
actually
them, yeah, and even telling them, hey, yeah, your first breakup, yeah, it's gonna hurt for a while. That's
feel.
okay. I'll be by your side. It's gonna hurt. Ooh,
Exactly.
it's gonna
Oh,
hurt.
yeah.
Yeah,
It
yo, it
sucks.
hurts.
And it sucks at any age, you know? And like, we're
Yeah.
not going to go to our friend as an adult and she's coming to us and crying over, you know, a breakup and be like, oh, get over it. You know, like that. I don't know why we do that with kids. We act like it's not valid because they're a child, because we know that they will get over it, but it doesn't matter for them in that moment. You know, like even like stresses around friendship and like, you know how it's so dramatic when you're a kid? Like there's so much drama and things happen so
So
fast,
much. Yeah.
but we forgot that we were kids once. And that's also why I talk, because I talk to teachers and counselors and stuff too. And a lot of them come up to me afterwards and like, oh yeah, it's a good reminder when I work with kids to remember what it was like, because they're so far removed and it's been so long. Like they forgot what it was like to be a kid and how much that sucked.
That's so great. And you're right. There's have you ever heard of like an inner child meditation?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I did a lot of that.
That's great.
Yeah.
And it's almost, yeah, revisiting what 5-year-old Brooke would feel in that circumstance. I think that would be something great for teachers and anyone that works with children. It's
Right.
like, as you said, we know we got over this. We know the perspective we have now because we have hindsight, and we're just like, yeah, it felt like a big deal, but it really wasn't. So my child's going through that. Yeah, it's not going to matter in a year, so I won't
Right.
validate. That's such a great point, Brooke. Um, I want to move topics and just, well, same topic. Um, so you're dealing with a lot of anxiety. You moved out of LA and dealt with a lot of depression as well. What have you found to be some really great coping skills for you to manage or even get over some of these things? Are there daily rituals, things you've read, things you've learned? Walk us through some of these coping mechanisms.
Yeah. So when I got here, I had do you know DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy? Yeah. So that was like a lifesaver for me because first of all, it's all workbook based. So it's really like we go to school. So like forced to go. So we know how to like do homework, most of us. And so for me, it was really important to have stuff that's like, here, this is what you might be feeling in your body. Like these might be body sensations. These might be certain thoughts. Now let's figure out what's going on with you. And so a lot of it was just like, how do I identify what I'm feeling, articulate it, you know, and tell other people? And like, that is usually the missing piece, right? Like with emotional intelligence, like how do you actually know what you're feeling? And so DBT for me really gave me like literally a workbook, like a guide to be like, here are some skills that we know work, now take them. And so I've taken a lot of little pieces from that. And I also meditate every day. Fitness for me has been a huge part. Like I know if I'm feeling depressed and I'm like been on the couch, like I just need to get up and even go for like 10 minutes to the gym. Like even if it's all I do.
Yeah.
Lot of mindfulness meditations, eating healthy, like that has been a big thing for me. Yeah, most of the meditation and being outside, like being in nature, because I didn't get a lot of that in LA, obviously. And just connecting
Yeah.
with the earth, you know, has
Right.
been like so healing for me. Even if it's for 5 minutes, like just get fresh air.
That's great. And I think that I've been saying great a lot. There's some self-awareness. I've been saying great a lot, but everything you say has been so great. And with food and coming outside, eating healthy and going outside, those are two very connected things. And
Mhm.
getting back to our roots. Do you think that we're so beyond kind of our own intelligence in a way? And what I mean is, we still have this 200,000-year-old brain, but now we have computer screens, microphones, cars, and skyscrapers. But we're so beyond what we should be capable of as far as our basic needs. Do you think we have to get back to basics, as you said, with nature and everything?
100%. Like, yeah, I think that we become so far removed that we don't even really know what our purpose is anymore. Like, all of the jobs and everything that's set up is just like, what is it even for? Like, if you really think about it, what is the point? Like, what is the point of being a cell phone salesperson? Like, what is literally the point? So a big part of like the work that I'm going to start doing, like I'm going to start facilitating workshops and stuff, is literally just taking people to the land. Like, whether it's like hiking, or farming. Like, farming has become a really big thing for me over this past summer. And remembering where we came from, like, we're supposed to tend the land and care for it and live, in a really close, intimate relationship with it. But now it's turned into this commodity. And so we forget like what we really are meant to do. Like, we're meant to provide for ourselves, grow food, and live. Like, but
Yeah.
we have all these, like you said, all this technology and all this stuff that just like has taken us away from that.
It has, and I'm a big proponent of technology, and as are you. It's like it's made us, it's brought us here today so we can connect. But there's what I speak about with kids is like the social media and mental health
Mhm.
piece, since I do the YouTube thing, and if I'm on a screen too much, man, oh, and
Yeah.
I just don't get that fresh air, or I don't see actual people, and I'm dealing with too much metal and plastic through the
Mhm.
day. You just feel gross. You don't feel
Yeah.
connected. You feel so, as you said, so far removed. And I think a perspective shift is really needed. And I love how you said, what's the point? If you really like keep asking why, um, ask like five whys, and you get a little closer to the source of the problem, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, I'm stressed. Why? Well, because I work too much. Why do I work too much? Well, so because I have to make more money. Okay, why do I want to make more money? So I
Mhm.
can buy more stuff.
Right. Exactly.
So I think it's great what you do, and how mindfulness has helped, and being in nature, and really knowing your roots, and
Mhm.
and you obviously share that in your speaking as well. um as far as food goes, are there any things, and we don't have to label this as diet or anything,
Yeah.
because there's some rules around that people don't like, but as far as changing lifestyle and just foods you avoid, are there anything, or is there anything that you don't eat that you found that makes a difference in your mood, or
Yeah,
so, or saying things that you do eat more of, I should say, as well?
yeah. So I try to stay away from dairy and gluten. I still eat it from time to time, but I do notice a difference in the way my body feels. And obviously, our bodies are very connected to our brains, especially our stomach. It's known as the second brain. And like, gluten and dairy both throw off like your gut bacteria. Like, if you have any stomach issues, they usually say take out those two things first and see what happens. And almost always it's like one of those things. But I also try to avoid sugar because, like, sometimes I'll wake up in the morning and I'm like, oh my god, I'm anxious. Why? No, I'm gonna like spiral into a panic attack or something. And I'm like, wait a minute, like, you had like an entire pack of Oreos last night. Like, that's why you feel that way. It always gives me anxiety, always. So I know I have to just be aware of that stuff, and like building awareness around the foods, because then you can still eat them, but from time to time, but just know how they affect your body. And so I eat a lot more vegetables. I always was pretty good with vegetables, but I try to just like fresh veggies, just, unadult, just like simple, just
Get
like we
back
don't
to
eat all
basics. Yeah,
Yeah.
so you're not, hey, you treat yourself to some Oreos here and there. And I think would you agree that this idea of moderation, has that been in balance? Has that been something that's helped you with anxiety and depression over the years?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Cause I also so I've had a lot of issues. So I had multiple eating disorders when I was younger, um, because I was in front of a camera all the time. So I felt really insecure about my body. And so I have this tendency to overdo it. I used to be very black or white thinking, and one extreme to the other. So with the vegetables and stuff, I went vegan for a while and lost a ton of weight and was really unhealthy. And then I went the other direction and was binge eating all the time. And so, yeah, the balance thing, I've had to really just come into the middle and not, you know, deprive myself of anything. It's not a big deal if you have pizza one night. Whereas I used to be oh my God, no, I can't do it. And hate myself afterwards.
Right.
And now I'm just screw it. I'm allowed to have pizza one day. And then it's all right. Eat healthier tomorrow, and not feel shame or guilt around it.
That's, you know, hmm. Do you talk about that experience with anorexia in your talks and
Oh
when
yeah.
you do and Instagram? Because do you ever get any hate from the community because you're still very trim, very fit, you look fantastic, but do you ever get hate because you still look great and you're still very trim? And you're also advocating for healthy eating and are part of maybe the anorexia awareness community. Do you know what I mean? Because a lot of people were like, oh, that, a body positive, I've gained a lot of weight back and maybe I'm a little chubby, and they're maybe more accepted in the community rather than someone who still has a six pack and is saying this type of messaging against healthy eating all the time. Does that make sense? Do you ever get
Yeah.
any hate from people?
So, no, at least not that I'm aware of. I think a lot of times any hate just kind of passes over me now, where I'm just I don't even recognize it. But I do think in some ways, I've had a hard time fitting into that community. But I have gained a lot of weight back. I gained 20 pounds after I moved here to the Berkshires. But yeah, I guess because I still am a fairly small person, um, there's a lot of people who might be no. But that's also why I try to talk about healthy eating, not in a diet mindset where it's just I talk about it very casually, because I think if I was very I'm an advocate for eating disorders, and was very specific about that, then maybe I would get more backlash. For me, I'm an advocate for holistic mental health. And
Right.
I've gone through a lot of shit stuff in the past.
You can swear, that's okay.
Okay, I wasn't sure. Um, and so I think because I just talk about all of it, it doesn't pigeonhole me. Where people are well, you can't be an advocate for eating disorders because you look you know what I mean?
Yes, completely. And you're not saying your message is very pure and comes from your own experience. And you're not saying only eat this works only, and it works for everyone. It's no, I had some cookies last night and I know the effect of that, this morning.
Right.
My eyes are really puffy this morning. It's because I had a beer last night.
Mm,
It's beautiful cause and effect. And I love how I figured that out.
right.
And a lot of it's as you said, get rid of gluten and dairy, see how you feel, and
Right.
then introduce it back. And if you know that effect is from the cause of these inflammatory foods, then that's just great knowing that.
Right.
So is there certain things that trigger the anxiety for you? You said one is sugar. If you have dairy or gluten, is that more anxiety? Is that feeling lethargic? How does that affect your mood?
Yeah, it's the gluten is usually just tired. It makes me feel really fatigued, which sucks because I really like bread, so that sucks. But yeah, it just makes me feel really tired, where
Yeah.
I'm just so I try to avoid it, but I'd still eat it sometimes. Like I said, now I just know. I'm all right, you're going to be tired. Don't eat it before you go anyway,
yes.
you
And,
know?
and that's it adds so much clarity knowing that. It's like, okay, I'm eating a bagel right now. Bagel. I've been made fun of. I don't know how to pronounce it. I mean the bread with the hole in it. And
Yeah.
I know that tomorrow I might not feel good. Okay, let's do some cost benefit analysis right now.
Right.
Is it
Exactly.
worth it right now? And just knowing is beautiful. I actually did just telling you really quick because you brought it up. Dairy and gluten. The World Journal of Psychiatry came out with this last year. They're called it's an antidepressant food score,
Mm.
and they rate all of these different kinds of foods
Oh,
by
wow.
how they affect inflammation in the brain and body and gut. And like great antidepressant foods are a lot of seafood, obviously. Vegetables is up there, of course. Organ meats, but at the
Mm.
very bottom, that things that don't do your body much good are dairy and grains. Very
Yeah.
interesting. Very interesting. What do you think the step is for people once you have the knowledge? And we know a lot. Okay, the brain's still a mystery, but we do know quite a bit about nutrition now. Uh, How did you take that step to actually implementing these changes? Because that's the hard part. How did you get to meditating every single day and practicing mindfulness? That's very difficult to do. How did you
Yeah.
get into those habits and routines?
So I just started doing it more and more, like every day. Like sometimes, like at least for me, I was always like a perfectionist. So I will always just like, all right, I have to start with 45 minutes a day of meditation. Like that's totally irrational. That's never going to happen. So I would just start with like a minute, like just something small. Like it's okay if you meditate for 1 minute. That's 60 seconds where you're being really mindful. Like that's enough, so just remembering that like healing is very incremental in really small steps, and celebrating even the smallest little steps helped me not only like feel confident in my capacity to do stuff like that, um, but it just like built it up over time. Like it built mastery around things, um, like I don't have to be a Buddhist monk. Like I can just have my 2 minutes. Like, so sometimes I meditate for 2 minutes, sometimes it's 45 minutes. But if I do it every day, that's all that matters. It doesn't have to be a long, long thing. It can be very small little steps.
Is there something that you'd be comfortable sharing? Something that you're really working on right now? Something maybe a thought process or something you're still struggling with that you're trying to work through?
Yeah, sure. So I have a very addictive personality. Like I can get deep into just addictive behaviors, like whether that's binge eating or, alcohol or anything like that. So I've been really working lately on not depriving myself of things, but being really mindful of my tendency to go too deep into stuff, and like just overdo things. So I'm still working on the balance piece, like with certain things, um, and being able to remember, like when I start being like really like binge eating or something like that, it's coming from somewhere. Like don't forget, there's an emotion behind this. There's some sort of stressor behind this. Something is triggering this behavior in you. So trying to remember to like when I meditate to like take that step back and look at that and not be like, it's okay, I because I'm still functioning,
Yes, yes.
um, but to remember that it's coming from something and be like, all right, you got to look at that. Don't ignore it. Like you can ignore it for a little while, but get to it, you know, don't forget
The
it's there.
Yes, you have a quite a head on you. So the metacognition of Brooke, just like you're very, very self-aware, and I think that came with practice through, as you said, DBT and mindfulness, and it just the way you're describing, how you work through these things. It's very personal and analytical, and you really get deep, which is amazing. Are there certain comforting thoughts you have that get you through certain things? Um, a lot of us search for, some type of purpose-driven thought or something to get us through something. Do you have some kind of personal mission statement, something that gets you through things? Or let's go even deeper. What do you think your purpose is on earth? Let's
Mm.
get real deep. What
Well,
gets you through these things? Yeah.
my
Like,
purpose is to share my story. Like, that is my purpose, and is to like remind people that you're okay. Like, not you're okay in the fact like you're gonna feel better, but who you are is okay. Because we are so programmed to like judge ourselves and compare ourselves. And the reality is like nothing is good or bad. It just is what it is. Like, it just is. So remembering, for me, it's like, when I do binge eat and I'm like, crap, I feel like shit right now, to not feel guilty, to just be like, all right, that's what happened. That's what I did. I can't change that. Now you're all right. Like, you're good. You're still a good person. Nothing has changed. Like, you're not, a bad person now. And like, we'll deal with it tomorrow. And so I think my purpose is to remind people that everything's all right. Like, we can be depressed. We can do bad things, quote unquote, and still be good people. Because we're so,
mm,
in this society, we demonize everybody. Like, there could be someone who's a saint for their entire life and does amazing work and saves people and helps people. And then they cheat on their wife and now they're a bad person. And like, it just chops down every other thing. So I think we look at ourselves that way a lot too. Like, oh, I was doing so good. Uh-oh, I made a mistake and now I'm a bad person.
oh,
So for
so
me,
clear.
that's like
Yeah.
really important to remind the kids, like, you're not bad. Like, you're not bad. Okay, maybe you got blackout drunk and cussed your mom out. All right, so that was coming from something. You're not a bad person. Like, nothing
Mm,
like that just happens. Like,
mm,
that stuff isn't just, it's always coming from somewhere. Even the most evil people, it's coming from something. And so like compassion and kindness for ourselves and other people is like what I just yell at the kid, not yell, but
but
it's
no,
just
no,
like
get it through. No, no,
through line.
compassion.
Yeah. And like, even for our parents, like, because that was a huge thing too. When I first started speaking, I think I still had a lot of resentment for my parents because a lot of stuff that they did was really painful for me. And so like now, after speaking to parents, because I speak to parents too, remembering that they were a kid before and they went through stuff, and like, so their behaviors toward us, their children, come from something, come from probably their own trauma.
Mm.
And so like the compassion and the kindness and the realizing that it all comes from somewhere, like with ourselves and with other people, is like, I feel like what I need to remind people. Because when you can have compassion, like, everything changes. Like, unconditional love, like, that's where I really try to like operate from. It's like unconditional love, even for people that I don't particularly like.
I love that message. And that is a very difficult thing for me to wrap my head around in practice. Of course, unconditional love. Jeez, that guy just cut me off. He's a dick. I can't,
Right.
oh, that's hard to love someone like that. Or I think your message a lot is understanding. And that's
Hmm.
very, very difficult, especially, you know, Canada is different, but the US is a little polarized. And
Lord,
to
yeah.
understand people from different political ideologies, that understanding takes practice and compassion. And by you starting with kids, like the work you do with kids and in middle schools, high schools, and then parents, it's so crucial. So anyone who's listening to this, please check out Brooke, and have her to your school ASAP. But
Yeah.
I think that's key. Um, Me personally, and maybe you have some experience with this. What I deal with is that guilt, of not doing enough and being productive enough. And as entrepreneurs, I think that's a very common thing because you always have a list of a million things. So when do you actually shut off and say, today's the day, I've done enough, and now I'm gonna watch a movie? And it's that's what I'm practicing on. I can barely enjoy the movie because I'm thinking of what else I
Mm-hmm.
have to do. Has that ever been something as an entrepreneur and Well, let's just keep entrepreneur. Has that been something that you've dealt with?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Cause like the work is never done, you know? And I've actually gotten pretty good now at like taking time for myself because what I like to do is like separate my list into like 3 lists, like things I got to do now, things that can wait a little while, and things that really don't have to get done, but I am freaking out about it for no reason. So like I make sure that I'm like, all right, because like, you know, like one day, let's say it's, you know, 6 o'clock in the evening, I can't go anywhere, like I don't have anything to do, but of course you're like, I have so many things to do. And it's
Yeah.
like, is it really gonna make a big difference if you send that email tomorrow morning versus right now? No, not really, because they're not gonna get it until tomorrow anyway. Just like
Mm-hmm.
rationalizing with myself, like it's not that urgent. Like sit your butt down, watch some, you know, Prank Encounters, which is like a news show on Netflix. It's really, you got to watch it. It's
Prank
hilarious.
encounters? Is it like pranks on YouTube, but now it's on
It's like
Netflix?
prank. Yeah, Gayton. I can't remember his name, but one of the kids from Stranger Things hosts it, and it's freaking hilarious. Like you got to watch it. So like binge. It's okay. Binge that tonight.
Yeah, yeah,
Watch
yeah.
7 episodes. Send the email in
And
the morning.
right. Yeah, you're so right. It's funny when clients ask for emails and when I used to work in advertising, they'll ask for emails on a Friday night. Like, you get this report to me on Friday. I'm like, you're not going to look at it
Yeah.
Friday night.
Mm-mm.
But they were the client and I had to do exactly what they said.
Right.
So
That's tough.
we covered a few things, and I think it's very helpful for people to seek within themselves that understanding. Like, that's a key message here, I think, and one that I'm working on too, that if you make a mistake, if you do something wrong, it doesn't make you a bad person. Like, that's maybe where we're learning with cancel culture.
Mm.
It's one bad thing,
Yep.
one tweet and you're done, your
Yeah.
whole career. Oh, are there any
Yes.
examples that you've seen that really irked you in cancel culture today?
Um,
I think Kevin
you
Hart
know,
was a big one for people because
yeah. I
decided not to
mean,
do the Oscars or something.
right. I can't think of anything in particular, but or maybe like even the thing with Gina. Did you see the thing about Gina Rodriguez saying the N-word, singing a
No.
song? Yeah, so Gina Rodriguez, I can't remember what show she's in, but she's been in a lot of stuff now. And she is Hispanic or Latinx, and she said the N-word in like a video. She was like rapping to a song, and she like said the N-word, and people were furious, which I do understand. Shouldn't be using that word. But then they just like went in on her. Like she was just this terrible person now, and she has no respect for the Black community, and like all this stuff. And it's just like, come on. Like, yes,
Mm.
she should not be saying that, especially not posting the freaking video on Instagram.
She
Like,
did.
come, like, come on. You have more of a brain than that.
Yeah.
But, you know, she did it. And so people are like hating her for it. And like, I get it. I get their anger, but it's just like, get over it. Like, she said one word. She's not an evil person. That doesn't mean
Mm.
she has no respect for the Black community. She made a
Right.
mistake. She made a
People
mistake.
people love, like, we need to fight for something today. Everyone wants to fight for a cause
Yep.
and to have meaning in their lives. The problem is that we're living far more comfortably now and we're running out of things to fight for. So
Yeah.
when a hot topic like this comes up, everyone's like rushing at it, being like, okay, I'm going to give my 2 cents because this is my
Mhm.
opportunity to share with the world how pure and
Yeah.
loving and logical I really am, and understanding.
Mhm.
I'm with you there. It's very interesting.
Yeah, and that's I hate not hate. I'm not gonna say that because I could get in some hot water, but I really dislike most of the movements that happen
Oh,
because
let's talk about that. Yeah, that's
I
great. Me too.
don't think that
Me
they're
too.
gonna help. You know, like I don't. When we say like we're fighting for this and we're fighting for that, why are we fighting if we want peace? That's the complete opposite. Like going to war for peace. How is that going to bring peace? So it's like the same thing with all the protesting, and like I do get it. I do understand taking up space so that people notice what you're doing, because then they can't ignore you. But I also don't really understand how fighting, let's say for racial equality, is going to bring understanding. It's not. So like we should be loving for understand, like we should be loving for equity and racism. It's like,
Right.
we need to shift the perspective from we have to fight for these things to we need to sit down and have an honest conversation with each other about things. If you're yelling at me and I'm yelling at you and we're like, see, that's why black people are angry black people, and see, that's why white people are white supremacists. Like, how do we ever get to the actual conversation? We don't. We're just mad. Like, and I think a big part of that too is like, we don't have purpose anymore. Like I was saying earlier about like, what's the point? That's why people want to fight, because we don't have a point. Like our lives are meaningless now. Like if that's what it feels like for a lot of people. They're like, what am I really doing? I'm going to work every single day for 40 hours, working for somebody else, coming home, working paycheck to paycheck. What am I actually doing with my life? Nothing.
Yeah. No, and then they'll join this movement, and it gives them
purpose.
It feels so purposeful and gives them so much meaning and contentment in their lives. I made that argument about the Flat Earth Society. I'm like, it doesn't matter what scientific evidence will be given to these people. And I'm having the guy on the podcast, the founder of the Flat Earth Society.
Nice. Oh my
But
gosh.
I don't think it matters. They can go into space and see the Earth, and that is a globe, and they won't still believe it. They'll be like, the window's tinted, because they're so involved with their community now that if they then prove that the Earth isn't flat, they're going to lose their entire community and sense of meaning. So these things give people meaning no matter what it is. And the fighting part, completely agree with you. It's always I'm right, you're wrong, and there's no dialogue in between.
There's no understanding.
There's no understanding. So what do you think of then mental health movements?
I think mental health movements, at least a lot of them that I see, not all of them, but some of them that I see that I think are helpful are storytelling. Like that's what we need to do, is start telling stories, because that's the only way people can see your perspective, is if you tell your story. And from what I see for a lot of mental health movements, that's what it's about. It's sharing your experience. And then people can be like, oh, okay. Either they relate to it or they can more easily see your perspective. But if we're not telling stories and we're just yelling at people, like, I don't think that's helpful. One thing, though, that bothers me about a lot of mental health movements is the illness part of it. Like that they've made emotion and feeling intense emotion an illness.
Yes.
Like what? Like, no, we just haven't learned, like our brains are wired badly because we haven't learned how to process and talk and share and find healthy ways to deal with our emotions. But I don't like that it's like this illness thing where like people, they're going to be, sick for 20 years. Like I got diagnosed with a borderline personality disorder, and they're like, you're going to be, 20 years, you're going to be miserable. I was like, nope, fuck that. And I was like, I'm going to show you that that's not true. And I think the thing about mental health movements that bothered me is people use that, diagnosis as an excuse not to actually do better. They can always lean on it like a crutch. Like, well, if I'm having trouble, meditating or being mindful, it's just my mental illness. It doesn't feel helpful to me.
I completely agree. Now, there's always these disclaimers we have to do. Of course, that's not the same for everyone, and blah, 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 blah. We all know that. So those listening, just know we're not talking about 100% of the population. There's a really interesting book called A Disorder for Everyone, and Instagram handle. And they speak about the same thing, that we pathologize emotion.
Everything. Yeah.
Everything. Like, we don't need a label right now. If you were to diagnose me right after a breakup, you'd be like, yeah, you're severely depressed. Let's get him on meds ASAP.
Yep.
Woo! You're not getting out of bed. Yeah, you can't eat, you can't sleep. So we need to come to an understanding of understanding, and not have these high expectations, as you said, for ourselves, that we made a mistake, that we're not happy one day. That's okay if you're not happy for a week straight, a month. Do you think people are leaning too much on quick fixes and looking for these labels to figure things out, rather than actually change their lifestyle and way of living?
Yeah, I think that is a big part of it too. Like I will say, when I first got the diagnosis, it was helpful. in the beginning. I was like, all right, now there's like a ground floor for me. Like this makes sense. It did make sense. So now I can look at the stuff that has worked for other people who have this diagnosis. But I think a lot of people stay there. They just stay at the foundation and they never actually build upon it. So I think, yes, see it. Okay, you have depression. Now don't cling to that, because when you cling to it, you just kind of stay in the same place because you're like, well, I'm depressed. And then you are identifying with it. It's attached to you. No, you experienced depression. Now, how do you move forward from there? Rather than like linking it, like now I'm a depressed person. Now it's your identity. And if that's now your identity, it's really hard to detach yourself from that.
Man, we are seeing eye to eye here. I've been prodding, seeing if we disagree, but we're still on the same page. I say the same thing. Well, language is really important, and you know how important language is when you're dissecting your thoughts, right? And thinking about these things analytically. You know how important a single word is in language. And I never say that I have depression. I was diagnosed too. Depression isn't my buddy. I'm not saying I have it and I'm a depressed person. I have anxiety. I say, yeah, I experience anxiety. Sure, I was diagnosed back in the day. Sure, I still get depressed sometimes, but usually it's because of some certain life event, or more specifically, and a lot of the time, something I ate. Like if I have 6 beers, I'm going to be depressed the next day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you think the solution is? How should people be viewing, let's say they have a diagnosis, and in your experience, you know, how do you move on from that and not identify so much with that?
I think just use it. Like, be like, all right, cool. Now I have something to work with. Like, now let me go look and see like what people who experience anxiety do to deal with that. All right, now I can use this stuff because there are accurate, things online. Like there are things that actually help when you get a diagnosis. Just use it and then be like, all right, toss it. Like at first I was like, yeah, I have BPD. And then I was like, well, I'm going to go do all these things. Well, now I don't think I have it anymore. And like they say, like that diagnosis will follow you around forever, but that's not true. And so then I was like, all right, now I ditch it. I don't need it. It's not with me now. Like,
sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, we all want to be a part of a community too. And so I think there's a part where like we want to find our identities. So when we do get a diagnosis and we can cling to that, it's like, all right, now I know who I am. But that's not always helpful.
That is something that really needs to be just hit home for a lot of the movements and a lot of other speakers. Because, hey, different things work for everyone differently, right? But I think you hit the nail on the head right there with if it doesn't serve you anymore, why are you still attaching to this label? And you keep saying, I'm a depressed person. I have depression. I have depression. I have depression every day for 5 years. Well, that's you. That it's become you. And, there's mixed evidence if positive affirmations actually work, but that kind of affirmation and just what you're telling yourself on a daily basis, that can have a huge impact. Are there certain things that you tell yourself on a daily basis that serve you well? Do you do any kind of positive affirmations during your meditation or anything like that?
I do. Yeah. It depends on like where I'm at emotionally. But I actually have I am tattooed on my wrist. Because when I was really struggling,
tattoo.
It's very small.
Oh, there it is. Okay. I'm like, she just lied. There's nothing. Okay.
Yeah, it's there.
Okay.
Yeah, like when I was really, really struggling, like the affirmations were really important for me because, like I said, we're all trying to figure out who we are, but I am like, even just that alone is enough because we're so many things. So like, why are we going to like put ourselves in a box? Like I just am, like I exist and I am so many things. And in the beginning, like the affirmations were really challenging for me because I was like, I don't believe any of this bullshit. Like I am amazing. I am beautiful. I was like, I don't believe that. So I stopped saying it because it's like, if you don't believe it, don't try and kid yourself.
Yeah.
Like, so I started using affirmations that were more like be in the present moment, like just be here right now, where I didn't have to attach them to me because I didn't believe that stuff. And then eventually I could, and then eventually I was like, oh, I am beautiful and I am pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But it took a while to be able to like pull that to myself. So really now it's just like, I just am, and that's okay. Like, I just am who I am.
That's beautiful. Do you think people struggle with, well, obviously we all struggle with identity and personality and where we fit in the world. Do you find, in yourself, being an entrepreneur, being a speaker, you're a whole bunch of things. I am, as you just said, I am, and you can fill that with a million things. Do you find that sometimes you wish or life would be easier if you could just have a very basic career, 9 to 5, go into a building, get your paycheck every 2 weeks, and have benefits, and live that very steady kind of lifestyle? Do you wish that? Are you glad you're not in that? How's it working?
I'm really glad that I'm not in that, because even those, I mean, there have been so many times where I'm like sleeping and I wake up with like in a cold sweat, like, how am I going to pay my rent? Like, just because money is it fluctuates a lot as an entrepreneur, at least for me. But I don't think I could ever survive in a regular quote unquote job. Like, it just doesn't resonate with me. Also, I really like being the boss. So like my last job, I was waiting tables and like the manager would try to tell me stuff. And I'm just like, no, like, no, I'm just not going to do that. So I'm not a good employee.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm good at my job, whatever I do, I'm good. Been good at it, but I'm just like, no, I can't listen to what somebody else. No, like we can collaborate and that's another thing. Like, I don't like the hierarchy in regular jobs. Like, I want to collaborate. Like, we should be working together, but everyone's trying to tell you what to do. And I just can't do it.
Especially when it comes to working for someone else, not specifically having a boss, but as a whole company. You're like, I have this role in this company, and everything I do isn't even really for me. It's for this other guy who's getting richer because of me. And I get it. You're part of a larger cause and machine, but a lot of people aren't aligned with even what they're doing.
Right.
So you find that entrepreneurship and what you're doing is giving you far more meaning than if you worked for someone else.
Oh yeah, because it opens up your world too. Like, you have more, for me anyway, more personal interactions with people, where as an employee I would never have that. Like, as an employee, I'm not necessarily talking to the client or whoever. I can't even think of a regular job right now. But like, I'm just able to make more meaningful connections. Like, even as a speaker, I'm a part of a speakers bureau, so I don't do my booking myself, but I go and I show up as me. I'm Brooke. I'm not the marketing manager, for instance. Like, I'm myself. I'm representing me and Brooke. I'm not representing this company as their whatever.
And that feels pretty good, doesn't it?
It feels great. Yeah. It feels really great, because then I can just be who I am and not have to like put on this professional, like I used to like wear blazers and stuff to meetings and like think I had to fit into this professional box. And now I just go as myself. I'm like, screw that. I have pink hair and, tattoos. And I'm just like, I'm just going to be me. And if they don't like me, they don't resonate with me. And I can make those decisions because I work for myself.
Yes.
Like, I don't need you as a client, where I always thought I had to like make the clients happy, even just like in my appearance, for instance, like put myself into a box.
That's I completely resonated with that. I used to work at Twitter, and just being in that environment, any office, I'm very not politically correct in ways that it matters. I'm not going to just go insult someone for the sake of insulting them and saying names, but you know what I mean? And I just couldn't for the life of me, go in that office and feel like I could really be myself. I was always hiding a little bit in some way. So I think you're experiencing true freedom, which makes me so, so happy. Now, for the listeners and viewers, I didn't mention, is this okay if this is on video on my YouTube channel?
Oh, yeah.
I know. I didn't even mention.
I know. I look all crazy.
You said crazy. That's not nice.
See, and that I hate that.
I know. Same.
You don't like. I use that in my speeches a lot. The word crazy, and I'm just like, I know, like a lot of people don't like that, but I was crazy. I was literally crazy, irrational. So why is it not an okay word to use? If you say it for what it means,
right?
I look irrational. Look at my hair. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, the hair looks great, but I'll say crazy. Some things are crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I saw someone throwing a plastic bottle in the garbage. That's crazy. Put it in the recycling. Come on, that's nuts. Okay, so for the listeners and viewers, I'd like to, I rarely speak this much on my podcast, but since we're doing video, you're just such a great listener. So I apologize if I spoke too much. I usually ask more questions, but you were very inviting listening to me. So thank you so much for coming on. I'd like to give you the microphone and put you on the spot, just like I have for the last hour, and just to share anything you'd like to with the listeners. This can be tips. This can be some motivation to tell them that they're awesome. This can just be promoting your website, whatever you want to do for however long you want to go on. You're on the spot. Any message you want to send to the world, you go for it, Brooke.
All right. Well, I think like the most important part of all my presentations are like remembering that we're capable. Because I think for me, like growing up, I always felt incapable of standing on my own 2 feet. And society's set up that way, where we're very reliant upon everything else and not ourselves. Like we have to have a bank and we have to go to the grocery store and we have to, like, all of these things are set up where we don't feel like we're capable on our own. So one of the biggest things for my healing was like, remember that you got this, like you can do it. And so especially people who struggle with anxiety and depression, like we feel like we're going to die and we feel like we're not going to be able to get through it. And so remembering that, like, remember all those other times where you depressed and felt like you were going to die and you didn't, that's a huge deal. And like celebrating every step that you take towards healing and towards you, like, you can do this, like you got it because you've done it. You're still alive. Like you can do it. You've done it. So remembering that for me was like huge. And I always just want to remind the kids that, like, remember when you were like, I'll never get through. Look at you. Like you did it. So yeah, I think that's like the last thing I want to share. And my website, brookemariebridges.com.
All the links are in the description to find Brooke. She's on Instagram, and she
also, I'm a rapper.
We were going to freestyle.
No, I can't freestyle.
Really?
Oh, not really.
Man.
But I have rap.
The white guy can freestyle, and
I can, but like my brain is kind of mushy. You know, it was Halloween last night, so
I get it. I totally get it. And it's still, well, it was early when we started, but no, I get it. We'll do it on another video. Okay. I'm going to create some beats today. Actually, I got the keyboard on the thing. I got the guitar and Mac set up there. So we're going to create some beats.
Oh yes.
Brooke Bridges. Is that your real name? Cause that's the coolest name ever.
Yeah. It's my real name.
Jeez. Brooke Bridges coming to the stage. Give her a round of applause. Like that just flows so nice. And is that how you start your talks?
Yo. So
check.
That's another thing. I'm real casual with the kids too. Cause like at first I was like, I have to be proper. I'm a mental health speaker. And I was like, they don't care about that. Like they don't want to see a boring person stand up there like, this is mental health and you're depressed. And so I just
way. They can smell the kids, they can smell bullshit from a mile away. Mm-hmm. Like, what are you selling?
Yeah. When they first see me, sometimes they're like, who's that?
Yeah. But then you start speaking. They're like, oh, she's got it. And then they listen contently and very focused. Brooke, thank you so much for coming on the Depression to Expression podcast. Everyone, thank you so much for listening and tuning in. Brooke, all of her videos are in the description, her links to her Instagram, YouTube, website. Please check her out. Brooke, thank you so much. SoundCloud, everything. There's going to be more collaborations in the future for sure.
Awesome.
Thanks so much, Brooke.
Thank you for having me.